23 are in the room virtually. So let us start. This is the final session for today. It's the third session. We had a first session in the morning from the Canadians' perspective in the middle of the night. Then we had a conference. And now we have the second session of the annual meeting. I think, yeah, some of you have seen you at least once today, some of them twice. Well, anyway, a warm welcome. Happy to see you. Happy to see you in this meeting. This is our third annual meeting in this setting in a row. We had the first annual meeting in a pandemic style in 2020, 2021, it was the second, and now we have the third pandemic style meeting, meaning that we have two sessions with respect to the different time zones. And we tried in the last years not to handle too complicated issues, and because we are not sitting face to face in the same room, we cannot discuss all together. We have two different discussions, and therefore we try to avoid deeper discussions like about strategy or changing the bylaws. This we cannot afford to do that every year. We need to do some changes, and we need to react on the environment that is changing. So this meeting will have some deeper discussions about strategic priorities. And we will also handle, of course, the formalities at the beginning. You are sitting somewhere home or in your office or wherever. When you see us in this room, it's part of the board. We are sitting in Vienna. We are sitting in Vienna in the UNIDO building. So that is geographically in Vienna, but politically it's something like nowhere land. It's or United Nations land. I don't know which law is applicable, but I don't think it's Austrian law. So whatever we do, nobody cares. This is not a coincidence. It's the outcome of the last International Consultancy Day in June. We invited UNIDO to have a presentation, and out of this developed very good talks, and we are very positive that we will start a partnership with UNIDO. We will have a meeting tomorrow with representatives of UNIDO, and they would like to partner with us as ICMCI in terms of supporting them in their consulting services. UNIDO is delivering all over the world, but mainly for this now it's in the African region, and it's mainly focused on agriculture. But they think, and we think, this is just the beginning, and everybody's hoping that it will grow. And it will the beginning of a very long and very good partnership, a win-win situation for both sides. We sent out all the informations for this annual meeting. We sent out reports, written reports, the old style, but also video statements, the new style. You can pick whatever you want. Maybe you have read the report and watched the video. Maybe you did only one of them. So we don't want to go through the reports in detail and have a presentation again. But we would like to discuss with you in the first part the formal aspects, like financial situation or the report from the membership committee, from the different committees. And in the second part, we would like to discuss with you a little bit more about strategic priorities in the next couple of years. If you don't have any further questions, let's start with the board report. I don't want to read the whole report again, as I mentioned, but I would like to add a few things and highlight a few things, trying to make it as short and as comprehensive as possible. I don't know, most of you might be aware that ICMCI is celebrating its 35th birthday this year, which is not so bad. It's my 35th birthday. That was a good celebration, but for many organizations becoming more and more mature, and for people it's usually not such big celebrations thing the older we get. But ICMCI is getting more and more mature too, and so we need to think about what do we need to adapt in our bylaws, what do we need to adapt in our policies, in the way how we act, in the way how we interact with our members or with the global consulting community. We do have two mega trends. One we handled in the conference, actually both of them. It's about sustainability. How can management consultants support companies in implementing sustainable development goals? And the second one is digitalization. Of course, it's not either or, it's in most situations, it's both. Thanks to Chris, who addressed that in his presentation 1 hour ago. It was proved again. Thank you for that. I want to add a couple of things to the report with respect to the board report and the strategic report. In addition to this situation, to that situation, first of all, the ISO standard we had this the review process, and we had a meeting with the ISO trainers. The outcome of the meeting was that ICMCI position is generally not to have a fundamental discussion about the standard. We don't need to amend it, and that was, so we proposed to our members to post that to the national standardization body, and most of you did. I think all of you did in that way, because there is no standardization body that said we need to discuss the standard again and we need to amend it. We will live for the next 5 years with this standard, and we don't need to do any fundamental changes. But what we will do is we want to adapt the checklist, especially with regard to sustainability and digitalization. And the checklist is our property. It's the property of ICMCI. We can do whatever we want to do with the checklist, and to develop the checklist to current megatrends. It's on us, and this is what we want to do, but not to change. There's no need to change the standard. It's not a concrete outcome of this review process, but maybe it was triggered by the review process that the Chinese standardization body, not our member, not IMC China, but the Chinese standardization body, has initiated to establish a committee to talk about management consulting standards and management consulting related standards. That was actually agreed in the last meeting in China, in the last discussion about the ISO 20700 standard, but then nothing happened, and now they put it again on the table, and they want to discuss about management consulting services. They have some ideas. Some of the ideas are worth to discuss. Well, all of the ideas are worth to discuss. For some of the ideas, I cannot imagine that we support it. For some of the idea, I can imagine to support. But what I said to Jack Yao, that's the name of the representative from China, that we support in general the initiative, and we want to be part of this initiative. We want to, because as a national body dealing with management consulting industry, I don't know how to explain that we do not want to talk about standards and to talk about the industry on a global level. But I also told him some of the issues he raised might be a little bit difficult for us. Some of the issues may be clever. but let us talk. So I don't know if you have been approached by your national standardization body already. I heard from some countries that they have been approached. So if they approach you and if they ask you, shall we support that? I think it's worth to support, and I think we should be part of this initiative. By the way, to say it clear, they need 6 countries to support, and I'm sure they will achieve the number of 6 countries that support them, and so the committee will be established anyway. So maybe it makes the decision a little bit easier, but I think it's a good initiative, and I think we should be part of the initiative and being active part in this initiative. This is for ICMCI, it's our task. Yeah, that's what I wanted to add to the report. Are there any comments from your side, especially to the last input with regards to the committee about management consulting in ISO? No, yeah. Angelo, yes, please, where are you? Oh, over there.
Yeah, I'm there. Maybe, yeah. Anyway, hello, everybody. It always surprises me that we talk about one country as an initiative when we shared with the fact that South Africa, for the last 2.5 years, has been leading the charge with South African national standards regarding 20,700. So it's no longer ISO 20,700, South African National Standard 20,700. We did a heck of a lot of work to get this accepted and to become the standard in South Africa. But unfortunately, and maybe fortunately, the control moves to the national standards body. I was hoping that feedback would come back to the committee, but it doesn't look like it has. And I just wanted to mention that. When we get to the resolutions, I have something else to say regarding the approval of the report, unless you want me to talk now.
No, you go ahead, maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a challenge. I don't want to be negative, but when we are asked to approve a resolution that says we approve the entire report, that means that there's probably, I think it was 72 pages. If we disagree with one single page, that means we've got to reject the report. In the past, before we became a board, when we had the previous structure in the ICMCI, we actually approved resolution by resolution, so that we could actually either approve or reject. If we approve a complete report of 72 pages, that means we implicitly approving everything that is in there, even if we disagree with some items. So I thought I'd just mention that because my board has got a problem with that.
Okay. Let me answer to the first part. Why do we talk about China? Because China wants to establish a committee on ISO level. It's not on their country level, but on ISO level. And this is why they approached us, and they wanted to know if we support this initiative on ISO level. And I think it's worth to discuss, or it's worth to mention, even to mention here, and we should be part of this initiative. Coming to your second question, the board report recommends, well, first of all, the board report simply lists what happened in the last year. This is, I don't know, I don't think it's something to discuss because this happened from the perspective of the board. And then we have some recommendations. Okay. And the recommendations, they are not going in that, they are not already changings of bylaws or new policies. It's just a recommendation, go in this direction and elaborate on the questions, should we change something in the bylaws or not? Is there anything we should handle in a different way? So if you have a different view some outcomes of the board. This is why we sit here and we discuss, and you're happy. We are happy to invite you to bring in your comments. But
Okay.
the concrete decision of changing of bylaws, for example, of course, that will be one resolution for the specific changes, and that needs to be discussed very concrete, change by change, of course, because that would be quite easy to change the bylaws in 20 or 20 different sentences and say, this is one resolution, please agree.
Okay.
For the time being, we are not on that level. For the time being, we say, okay, let us elaborate further in this direction. And many of the proposals, they will not end up in the changing of bylaws. Many of the proposal is just action done by the board or done by the committees or by somebody else. So,
can I answer? May
Sure.
I answer?
Sure, please.
Okay, so I'm not referring to changes in the bylaws, which have to be done step by step. I'm referring to the content in the report, which includes forward initiatives. And I'm just going to pick one from memory. In one of the reports, we said that the ICMCI is planning to set up a degree program in conjunction with a particular university. And that comes to my second point, which is that the ICMCI should be very careful about conducting initiatives which are seen to be in competition to the individual institutes as well as the individuals who actually provide services to those individual institutes. So that's just one example. And that's why I'm saying that we've got to be careful how we produce the report. It should be totally historical, then I can approve it. If it's forward thinking and it's got forward statements, if we approve it, we're actually approving all the plans.
Okay, Ellen is not here. Yes, that's the academic fellow. Are you talking about the academic fellows?
Yeah.
The thing is that this would be some sort of a program that's to test how we can expand within the academic fellows community. It is not something that would affect, number one, the IMCs and what they deliver. Number two, rolling it out would include the IMCs, and especially the academic fellows from all the IMCs. And if you want, I can put you in touch with Alan or Simon. They can both explain that further to you, Angelo. But the thing is that it's a trial. It's us looking into ways of expanding using the academic fellow community that we have.
This is why we sit here, Angelo. Thank you for the input. We need to discuss with Alan. He's not in the meeting now. He had been in the first meeting, in the morning session. That's the disadvantage of having a separate meeting and the discussion about the reports in two separate rooms. Let us connect. But you are connected with Alan, I think. Okay. So we will ask Alan to approach you and discuss it with him, because there are two different perspectives. One is we want to have a test how to get in contact with universities as a stakeholder in the management consulting industry. I think universities are a stakeholder in the global management consulting industry. And the other aspect is, do we compete members? And that is, of course, a showstopper. We don't want to compete members. It's the other way around. We want to support members. And competition to the members, it might, if we don't set up properly this project, it might end up that we compete members, and we have to do everything to avoid that situation. And therefore, you are experienced in that field, Alan is experienced in that field, and I'm 100% sure that we can sort that out.
Okay, if I may just conclude one item. I thank you for your feedback. All I want to say is that if we have a report which is historical, we can easily approve it. If there's any forward-looking items, they should be separated out so that we can either approve or disapprove of them in the same process. That we don't, I don't want to derail a 72-page report, but I also cannot approve the entire report if it's got forward-thinking statements that I might disagree with. That's my only comment, and I'll rest there.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for making the comment what the specific problem is, because if we can sort it out, the earlier the better. And you're right, if we set up something that is going far beyond that, and at the end of the day you tell us, I don't want it because I have good reasons for that, it's bad for all the people who are involved in the process that has overseen something. So thank you for showing these things up as early as possible.
Robert?
Yes, Johan.
Juan, I could not agree more with Angelo. What he is saying is so true. Unfortunately, and I don't get into politics, but it's one of the problems we have in the United States, where they try to pass a bill with 52 addendums to it, and people may disagree with an addendum, and it creates all sorts of problems. So he has really hit on a fundamental issue, and I think it's something that should be seriously looked at. That's my perspective. So I agree with you, Angelo. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let's proceed in the agenda. The next item is the Treasurer's report. Tamara is here. Tamara is here to answer your questions, and these questions are along her reports. It is about the Treasurer's report, the Auditor's report, and the proposed budget. This is something where we need to have a resolution on. So, of course, this will be discussed in detail, but if there are any questions in addition to the reports and the videos, please use the time. Yes, Angelo.
It's always me. Okay, I think a very good report. There's just one comment I would like to make. There was one small item in there which raised a concern with me, in that we are saying, I think we're going to increase the budget by 1.5%, which is not a lot in the bigger picture, but I do not believe that the ICMCI can continue to increase its budget in times of recession, because all the institutes that I'm aware of are actually declining in revenue. So I would just make the point that we should be a lot more conservative than we are, and not just post increases. We should actually cut our cloth, as they say, to suit our budget. That's my only comment. Otherwise, great report.
Thank you, Angelo, and I totally agree with you. And that's why we have two focus areas that we need to be working on in the near future. One is increasing our membership base, which means that our revenues comes from more members, but the other is increasing our project revenues. And until that happens, we have costs that we need to cover, and that's why our suggestion is in 2023-2024 to do this small increase in the membership fees. And this basically covers in part, or in a very small part, the difference in the exchange rates, the inflation rates, etc. But especially for those members that do not deal in euro, that means a lot of savings actually. It won't have a big impact.
Thank you for the feedback. I just want to point out that the same report, the 72-page report, mentioned that we have stagnated at 48 member countries, and that we are behind in some of the member assessments, which could lead to issues, because I'm reading between the lines here. And of course, South Africa, we'll be honest, we've been struggling with finances, and we came to a very friendly agreement regarding payments. But the point is, and I need to emphasize, that we are not growing the ICMCI, and we should be very conservative about passing increases across to the members. And I want to point out that people who are paying in dollars at the moment may be feeling very comfortable. The euro and the pound has declined, never mind our currency, which is looking like rubbish. So I just want to make those points for the record. I do not want to get into an argument. And I still believe that great work is being done here. So I'll rest it there.
Thank you, Angelo.
Any further comments? Sorry.
No, I was just going to ask if there are any other questions.
Okay, then let us move forward to PSC, PSC report. Selar is here now. If there are any questions to Selar, any comments, congratulations, whatever, please speak out now. All is fine, very good, thank you. We are going forward to QSC. Nick, he's sitting over there.
Happy to receive any questions.
Thank you very much. Then we have Gergana. Gergana has two reports. One is the future of management consulting, and the second is about membership committee. Gergana, do you want to add something?
I think what we try to do in the membership committee to explain better the ways of performing the reviews, and the report was, I think, provided quite a good detail. I don't know whether you managed to go through it, and I wanted to thank the members of the membership committees for doing the work. I think going forward, what Tamara has said is very important, that we should be looking for ways of expanding the membership. Maybe there are opportunities and market drivers which could help us if we adapt faster. In terms of future management consultancy, I think overall, now that we are almost coming to an end, we have a milestone event which will be listening to some 20 young consultants, future leaders, about their perspective of the future of the profession, which will be announced quite soon. Otherwise, we have made a few recommendations for continuing the knowledge exchange, because I think what the future management consultancy managed to do is to demonstrate that ICMCI and the national institutes and the individual consultants could work together, I would say even shoulder to shoulder, for the benefit of the profession, exchanging the information and knowledge, which I think is a bit of a cultural shift within the ICMCI network. We have recommended 3 things to continue with digital transformation in a more focused way, with the ESG trend, how to prepare consultants for that, and the ethics, because again, the new circumstances have brought a lot of new dilemmas, new questions for ethics. And the other recommendation would be to transform or upgrade the Future Leaders Forum to a permanent structure within ICMCI, which I hope will be a matter of fact, very soon. So I wanted to thank again all of you, the whole network, for being so active and making this a success story. Any questions? I'll be happy to answer.
Okay, thank you. And we had a short discussion sorry, Angela.
It's always me. Gergana, thank you for all the work you've done. I just have one recommendation, is that the people on the panel, you should confirm probably on an annual basis that they are fully paid up members, because I noticed one person participating who does not seem to be paying his dues in South Africa. Just a point.
Okay, I see your point, although Angelo, the idea was that with the future management consultancy, we'll open up the organization and we will invite consultants in general to kind of make the breach with a wider audience, but I understand your point.
If we can just get feedback from the committee, because we get no feedback as to what's being discussed as an institute, and we would love to know what is happening and what is the trend and what is being discussed from an informational point of view. That's just a request.
Okay, I understand that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, then let's move on. Well, we already had a discussion about academic fellows. Alan is not here, and we handled this issue. If there is anything else about academic fellows, no. Thank you. Angelo.
Please let Zakir talk first because I've been talking too much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Angelo. And thank you everybody for giving me the opportunity. I just want to mention one particular thing. I think we have miles to go to, promote CMC, because I came across many international consultants, but I found them like 90% of them, even 95% of them are not carrying such designation like we are talking about CMC. So I wish and I hope that in future, ICMCI will take a vigorous initiative to promote this, because this CMC branding is now becoming essential, especially in the developing countries where Tom, Dick, Harry becomes consultant, like printing a business card. So I would urge once again to, take more vigorous initiative to brand CMC. Thank you so much.
Yes,
I
agree.
Okay. Just two things. One is just to point out that there is an initiative to look at a middle level consulting designation below the CMC. Anybody involved in that is welcome to talk to us. We've been doing this for about 15 years. And we haven't had any questions regarding our approach, which we can share with whoever's involved. That's the first thing. The second is, I really appreciate what the academic fellows are doing, but I do not believe we're getting sufficient in feedback from our inputs. We would appreciate a slightly more structured set of feedback regarding the initiatives, the timelines, and what is happening with our contributions.
I'm trying. Do you mean feedback from the academic fellows?
Yes, correct. I know there's two individuals involved, one at board level. I was just checking to see if I was muted or not. There's one who's basically chairing the committee and one at board level. I would just like the two individuals to structure the feedback and the initiatives a little bit better so that we know what is happening to our input. Because I had a few sessions in this regard, and the inputs were considered very good, but I never got feedback. And we're talking 3-4 months ago. And then there was also inputs to a book for which I've had no feedback either. So I'm just requesting more structured.
No, okay. So do I understand it? You mean feedback to contribution you did to the academic fellows?
Correct.
Okay. Yes, we will forward that. Yeah, okay, understood. Now, we have another formal aspect that is about the resolution and voting process. It's on you, Jeremy, Mr. Secretary. Okay. This is your last, no, it's not the last.
Yes.
No, there's another one.
So, yeah, my role here as Secretary is to ensure that the proper processes for voting and resolutions and so on are followed. And Angelo, I've taken note of your comment and Juan's support of this about the tidiness, if you like, of the resolutions, about ensuring that in future, this has to be, of course, as opposed to this time, but actually a consideration about separating past reporting from future suggestions and proposals. I know from my experience as Secretary that in the past, over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years, when I've been on the board, we haven't been particularly detailed about separating those two things. They've often come up in the same resolution. And, because I bear some responsibility for ensuring that the resolutions are proposed properly, I think I think your feedback is very helpful and timely, so that for future years, we can perhaps be a little more diligent to separate these things about reporting on past activity, which is, as you point out, Angelo, is kind of factual. This is what we spent, this is what we did, and consideration of future activity that is planned. Now, this year is my last year as secretary. In fact, I stopped being secretary at the end of 24 hours time is my final responsibility is discharged as secretary, because my term on the board has lapsed. So the next secretary, who the board will elect tomorrow, will undoubtedly want to communicate with all the members and ensure that in future these resolutions are perhaps composed a little more sensitively. So I appreciate your feedback, Angelo and Juan, and thank you for your comments.
May I make a comment just before you get off that point? In
Sure.
order to make this simpler and not land up with negative votes on the resolution, may I propose that when we vote on the board report, that we just put a condition on there that says we are approving all historical matters and future plans are subject to scrutiny, something like that. Then we can actually approve the board report without negative comments.
Yeah, I think something like that could be planned for future years. Clearly, we don't have that opportunity this year, and I would suggest if you have a concern about future plans in the way that you do, and you've mentioned it, by all means vote against it. It's not a problem. We're very happy to represent that as a vote, and I think we'll understand what that means because you've made the comments here. So if you feel that, please go ahead. Do vote against it. I hope that not everybody will, but of course, if everybody does, or if a majority do, that will mean that that resolution is held, and a replacement board report would have to be produced in due course, fairly swiftly actually, for a separate proposal. So that would be honestly, my procedural suggestion for this year would be to do that. I would say. I hope that you won't take that view, but it's up to you. It's a democratic organisation. If you want to do it that way, that's perfectly fine. Because the procedure for voting, as most of you will know, is that you've all had a link to a voting screen. And we know that so far, several people have activated that link and voted their intentions. But you have until 7 o'clock UTC, 7 a.m. 0700 UTC tomorrow, which I think might be today in some parts of the world, but it's anyway, in about 14 hours time, 14 or 15 hours time, to cast your votes. And we will then count the votes up, and we will publish the results of the votes in a couple of hours after the voting polls close tomorrow. So you'll remember the votes, I hope. I don't think we can show them on the screen particularly, but you have the opportunity to accept the board report, and Angelo's made a comment about that already, for which we're grateful. You have an opportunity to accept the Treasurer's report and the budget separately for the future, and you have an opportunity to accept endorse the strategic priorities for the board, which Robert will in a few moments talk through in more detail. And of course, that fourth vote is all about the future. And it could be that that's where you want to focus attention for future implementation, if you have any questions or concerns about that. So in terms of procedure, that's the approach we'd like you to follow. And if you have any questions, I see you do, Angelo, so that's good. If you have any questions about the procedure, I'm happy at this point to do my best to answer them.
It's just a procedural item to the secretary of the ICMCI. I believe the link was sent to our chairman and not to me. I'm the voting member. If you could just correct that so I can vote, please.
Okay, I have my staff over here. I say my staff, that's a bit pompous really, but the staff of ICMCI here who are looking for this. Apparently, I don't know, your Your other member, Kiran, is that his name?
Yeah.
Apparently is the voting member according
Is the
to
voting
our
member.
records.
No.
So I think what may have to happen here, Angelo, after this meeting, if you don't mind, if we can resolve that question between you and Rima and or Kazema, then we can either resend the voting paper or we can clarify it with you personally about what the appropriate method is. I believe you have one vote for your institute. So it's a question of how that should be cast. I understand. So after the meeting, I'm going to suggest that you and Angelo, you and Rima and so on, discuss this to work out the most appropriate solution. Okay. So thanks, Angelo, and apologies if that seems to have gone in the wrong direction. Okay. So I hope that's all right for the procedure, and thanks again, Angelo and Juan, for raising your points. It's very helpful. Thank you. Back to you, Robert.
Thank you. Any further questions about resolutions and the voting process? If not, let us go to the next item on the agenda. We're a little bit behind. Talking about strategic priorities. As I mentioned, in some other meetings, we had been starting to talk about strategic priorities almost a year ago. We very quickly decided that the basic strategy, the vision of ICMCI, they are still valid. There is no need to change everything from the scratch. What we need to do is we need to check if everything that we do, the way how we do and the way how we interact with different stakeholders, if this is still up to date or if we need to do some amendments to that respect. And to have a little bit more structured discussion about that, we defined 3 pillars. And along these pillars, we had this discussion. What is a strategic priority for the near future of our activities and of the behavior of ICMCI? The first pillar is the pillar ethics and standard that includes the ICMCI standards like competence framework, code of conduct, but also the ISO standard 20700, the development of other standards. It includes the CMC, of course, assessment, everything that is our core. That is why ICMCI exists. This is in our brains, it's in our stomach, it's everywhere. This is why we live ICMCI, to make these contents or these standards or these ethics stronger and more visible in the world. The second pillar is what we call knowledge development and sharing. That means how do we to identify trends, and to identify developments in the industry, talk about these trends, build knowledge around these trends, and share this knowledge among the community of management consultants or further on. This is a pillar compared to the first pillar that exists, but where we said there is something we need to improve. We are not up to date with our activities to that respect. And the third pillar is the representation pillar. The representation, I see some people sitting in this annual meeting. I know they have been attending a couple of conferences and talking about we need to do more marketing, we need to do more communication, we need to be more active in the world of social media, in the online environment. And a couple of years we started to be very concrete in these activities. Yehona, she's unfortunately she's not here now. She is the chair of the marketing committee. She has been very active, and since a couple of years we are present. We are present in our community. We are not very present to the whole world, but we are present within our community. We share experience. When we do webinars, like we did in the last year, we get up to, I think, 400 or 500 registrations for the webinars. not all of them attend, but people realize that there is an activity out of ICMCI, but it's something where we need to be developing a little bit more, and where our mature activities request that also communication should be up to date. I would like to highlight some things that we had along these pillars, some very concrete outcomes that we discussed along these 3 pillars. Not saying that this is everything. If you read the full report, you get a full list of the concrete activities along these pillars and what's the benefit and what's the impact on the IMCs. But I would like to highlight some of them. First of all, and I think Zach mentioned that we need to promote the CMC, and that is something you need to do on a more or less yearly basis. We need to shape the value proposition of the ICMCI standards. What does it mean? ICMCI standards is the competence framework and the CMC. That is the most prominent ones, and that enables us to run awareness campaigns. We do have a value proposition, but value propositions have to be adapted, as I said, more or less on a yearly basis, because our recipients change and they have different understandings, and we need to communicate. Our recipients like to communicate, and not like we do like to communicate. And that includes that we establish a sustainability policy that addresses diversity, ethics, and trainings, because we think that is something that is of importance for our community. It's something new. We don't have this policy, but we need to develop it. That's it's a clear to do, and that is along this pillar, ethics and standards. I think these are the 4 highlights that are important to understand. Then we have been discussing about knowledge development and sharing. That is actually not, it's not perfect, and we can improve, of course, but the initiative, The Future of Consulting, is addressing this, to share our knowledge, to discuss with people from the industry, practitioners, but maybe partly from the client side. This is something that is already quite successful, but I think there's still room for improvement, and there is still many things to do to be more active to that respect. I want to say at this moment, and not only for this outcome of the discussion, we had this for all the discussions for all 3 pillars. We always had in mind, what is the impact on the IMCs? How can the IMCs benefit from that? And this is so important because when we grow the community of Future of Consulting, it's not for the purpose of ICMCI. We are ICMCI. It's for the purpose of the members of ICMCI, and it's for the purpose for every single IMC. Maybe it's a way for IMCs to find and attract new members. Maybe it's a way to get in touch with new members in a manner that is, for a global organization, easier than for a national organization. And maybe they need the detour with the global organization finally to become a member in a specific IMC. I think that is something we should work in the future together on that, and find out how can IMCs benefit from this initiative, especially this initiative could be very helpful to attract new members. And I'm sure you have the same impression, especially young people. They're very interested in connecting in international. That could be, for example, to have a curriculum together with the IMCs for young consultants. It's delivered by ICMCI, but it's on global level, and IMCs could send students or could send young consultants to be part of this curriculum. That is something a global organization like ICMCI can do. And it's very hard for a national organization, because they are looking for this global approach. Angelo addressed it already, the new level of certification. It is not a new level, it is how can we lower the entry level for certifications, but not only for certification, but also for new members. For certification, we have an entry level that is the ISO standard, and the ISO training actually is the entry level for potential or existing new members of an IMC. That is, it's for me, I don't think we should go below that, because that is the standard, and standard is it's a good practice standard. It's not best practice standard, and I don't think we as an international organization should go below the good practice standard. But at the end, there is the gold standard. It's CMC. We have a quality approach. We should not discuss this quality approach in terms of harming the quality approach. This is still the gold standard, but the difference between the entry level and the gold standard is something that is a quite big gap. And maybe we find most probably it's not a certification. In the morning session, I think it was Lydia who mentioned the registration, which is distinguishing between a certificate or proving that there is a training or is some sort of education with a specific field of knowledge. And that could help for people who are attending the ISO training. At the end of the day, after a couple of years, they might become a CMC. But in between, we should stay in touch with them and provide additional certifications. Most of them might be set up on IMC level. It's not every certificate in between that needs to be done by ICMCI. But some of these certificates might be as an ICMCI registration, register or whatever. There could be an ICMCI sustainability consulting register, for example, and that is a global register done by ICMCI, and it would address the global approach of sustainability, for example, and others done by the institutes. And I already mentioned the entry level for members, new members of ICMCI. It's the same situation. Some of the stakeholders might become members. They want to become members in the existing paths, but some of them won't. Some of them just want to be connected with us. That could be a consulting organization. It could be a global organization. It could be some other stakeholder in the industry. And we need to find a way how to connect with them, not competing the IMCs, just to say it very clear and loud at this time, but helping the IMCs to connect with other stakeholders on a global level. And the third pillar I want to mention is the representation pillar. It is, I already mentioned that we have a communication going, an ongoing communication. I'm sure you realize what we are doing with the newsletter and LinkedIn and Facebook and social media. But I think we can become better in that respect. It should be a way, we need to find a way how to collaborate with our members. And therefore we need to be able to have a very concrete campaign planning on a yearly basis. If we would have a campaign planning on a yearly basis, it could be something for our members to say, okay, I want to be part of this campaign, and let us do that together, and let us roll out this in some area in the world. Let's find a way how to share costs, but at the end of the day, we are expecting to find new members. For example, that could be a campaign for the International Consultancy Day. We do that as ICMCI, and if somebody wants to register in Turkey, I see Selal sitting there, Turkey, the IMC in Turkey says, okay, you can register for the event. It costs 100 euro, but if you become a member in IMC Turkey, it's for free. And so the benefit for the IMC in Turkey would be new member. I'm sorry, I used the word Turkey, and I think this is wrong. Zela, it's how you call the country that has been called Turkey. No, it's changed.
Yeah, Turkey.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Pronunciation.
Yes, Turkey. Yes. It's not the verb. That is what we want to say.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
That is the representation pillar, and we want to go in this direction along these three pillars. We would like to discuss that with you, and we do have two task forces. That's the government task force and the stakeholder review task force. They do have more concrete recommendations from their task force perspective. Maybe we should handle them before we go in the general discussion round, because we could be a little bit short of time. So Dwight has a small presentation. It's small. It is small.
Yes, I do. It is small, but as I said this morning, what is a management consultant meeting without at least one PowerPoint? So I did want to give you some insights to the governance task force report. And we did present this earlier this month at some of the open sessions that Robert has for delegates and executives of institutes. And one of the things that I got from feedback is to try to set the tone in terms of what it is that we're trying to accomplish. So I've put together a few slides to do that because, as we all know, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think it really will help to set the scene for the work that the task force has done. The genesis of it is that this is our 35th year as a global organization, but we have changed a lot over the years. The first 27 years we worked without any staff organization. We had some support towards the end for bookkeeping and records keeping and so on, but beyond that we didn't have an executive director type role which really managed the organization. So it really does come back to the fundamentals. Any of you that have worked in not-for-profit organizations will recognize that you have the governance of your organization who sets the direction of the organization, and you have the management and the staff that really figure out how to get there within the resources that have been applied and within the context set by the governance. So this body, this annual meeting of delegates, is the governance of this organization.
Are you doing the presentation already? Because
no, I'm just going to start it. I just thought I'd set it up a little bit and then I'll start. But thank you. I appreciate that because that has happened to me before. So thank you. So let me just share the screen, and I want to walk quickly through some of the thinking that led to the task force. The starting point is that you should see it on your screen now.
Yes.
Great, thank you. The starting point is to thank the members of the task force. So we did come together earlier this year to really start giving some thought to what has changed in the way ICMCI does its work, and are our current processes, structures, and so on really set up to be able to support us in our work. So as I mentioned, that the project did kind of take on a life of its own because these have not been updated in a fundamental way to take into the account that we have a full-time executive director since we were founded. So it really is time to look at this, and we did want to get explicit and make recommendations to you about what needs to change. So if we talk about the governance of the organization and the work that we do in this body as the annual meeting of delegates, we're fundamentally concerned with thinking about things like, where are we now? What are the kinds of issues that we're facing? And what is our desired future state? Where is it that we want to go to as an organization? And having decided that, what are the goals that we need to accomplish in the coming period of time for us to be able to do that? So we have a 3-year strategic plan, and that strategic plan depends on us as governance figuring out what it is that we want to be, what are the resources that we're going to apply to get there, what is the budget that we will have, and therefore the membership fees that we will contribute towards doing that. And then through our board, which we elect and hold accountable for doing work between meetings of our annual meeting, the board would oversee the work of the staff organization to implement that. So having from one who has seen our organization operate, as many of you have, with and without a full-time secretariat, we've seen huge difference in the ability to actually implement our programs and services. So to talk about it simplistically, then governance is really concerned with where we are now and where we want to get to, and how much effort in terms of resources it's going to take us to be able to get there. I don't want to oversimplify, but from our perspective, it is really thinking about what the organization needs to look like, and our focus needs to be on there. And I appreciate Robert's earlier comments about the pillars and envisioning models of what needs to happen. However, once it's delegated to the board, and from the board to the executive director in terms of these are the specific objectives that you must meet, it looks a lot different, because now we're operating in the real world, and our staff organization has to make decisions in terms of how we get there. So the path isn't that simple line that we can draw on a chart. Rather, it's, what do we need to do this year? There's a change in membership. There's a break in the budget. Something else happens. So there has to be a way, kind of not a considered meandering, if you will. There might be opportunities that hadn't been envisioned in the time of the strategic plan. And so then we move forward with that in that way. So the important part then, in terms of governance and management of the organization, is how does this body, as the overseeing body that represents institutes and the key supreme body, if you will, of the governance of the organization, ensure that work that we're investing in attaining our strategy is used in the very best way. And based on our current structure, there are some gaps. There are some hurdles that are getting in the way of our staff organization being as effective as possible. And that has an implication as well on our governance organization. So if you look, this is the model that's on the website. This is our governance structure. It was adopted after the breakthrough strategy, just before we started the trial, the one-year trial of having an executive director in place. So as you'll see here, in the first case, the Assembly of Delegates, which is our annual meeting, has a nominating and succession planning committee. As chair of that committee, I'll be reporting shortly, reporting directly to it, and it has a board of directors reporting to it. So that immediately creates two different points of accountability. Best governance practices would be that the Assembly of Delegates, this annual meeting, would be able to hold one body accountable for producing the results that you expect between meetings. And that should be the board of directors. We'll come back to that in a minute. Another issue is that you see the structure has the executive director and the secretariat off on the side like this. So that means that all of these standing committees actually have dual reporting relationships. Part of their work is to the board of directors to make recommendations, to recommend policies, to recommend new programs, to improve standards, whatever it might be, all of those things around governance in terms of who we are and what we do. But the executive director also needs to rely on those committees for the actual implementation of those programs. So that's part of operations. So we get this kind of schizophrenic operation happening at the committee level, where committee members are sometimes being accountable to the board for providing policy recommendations, and sometimes accountable to the executive director for the implementation of programs and services. So that puts the executive director in a very difficult situation, because instead of being able to direct the staff organization, there's a lot of negotiation goes on. And I have attended meetings where I see the chair saying an update on the status of this program, and turns to Rima and asks for the update. And action following, oh, that would be the staff organization would do the action following. So we're actually slowing down the staff organization by having a pro forma board in place, almost a standing committee in place that oversees the work, when in fact that should be the accountability of the board of directors to delegate to the executive director and carry that forward. So the proposal that we have in front of you, and we go through a lot of pages to explain this, is that we have a much cleaner governance organization where the Assembly of Delegates, this annual meeting, does elect the board of directors and requires through bylaws at least 2 standing committees. One of them is governance and nominations. We're suggesting that the NSPC have a slightly broader oversight in terms of, are we operating in best practices in governance? Are we doing the proper kind of evaluation of our work and so on? And that we would have a finance and audit committee, which isn't even mentioned in our bylaws currently. So that should be enshrined in the bylaws, that this body would want to have regular reports both on our governance and succession planning nominations and on our financial situation in the organization. And that the board of directors would have the authority to create additional standing committees. We have our standards committees, we have our assessment and quality assurance committees and so on. Those would need to be in place, but the actual duties of those committees might change more often than the governance and nominations and the finance and audit. Then in the staff part of the organization, we would have the executive director who is accountable for the implementation of our programs and services, is guided by the board of directors, provides that oversight, evaluates that work and reports to the board of governors, to the annual meeting in terms of the work that has been done through the historic report that we talked about a bit earlier. As part of that work, the executive director has paid staff, but can also recruit volunteers to help with that implementation. And as you'll see on the side, the executive director would also have the authority to create working groups where she might be able to bring together groups of volunteers to support the implementation of programs and services. And the orange at the bottom is that this is all done in the context of the general public, because we are working within society. So just one more minute to tell you about next steps. So the task force work is completed. So the task force has done its work. The next step is the last step that we did as a task force is we reported to the board, and the board did submit this report to this Assembly of Delegates. So the report that you have in front of you was actually submitted by the board based on the work done by the task force, which was created by the board to do this work. So the board will then begin to work as outlined in the report. Notice that the recommendation for approval of this year's strategy is support. The word support is purposefully in there because this report is appended to the strategic document. So we're not asking for you to approve today 59 recommendations, some of which have bylaw implications. Rather, we're asking you to support that we begin this work seriously at the board level. So we will have consultations at the 2023 hub meetings. We'll create additional broader consultations as necessary as we run into issues that we want to discuss and explore with you. The board will, though, be able to start implementing changes that are consistent with the report. For example, clarification of terms of reference of committees. That can be done without changing any of the bylaws. But if there are any aspects that do fall under the authority of the delegates through this annual meeting, then those would come back to the next General Assembly after having had the opportunity and the time to do the sufficient consultations and to recommend to you as the delegates any changes that we have. Hopefully we'll all be in the same room at the same time. That would be amazing. And if there are any implications for bylaws, which I expect that there are, but those would come to you at this next meeting of annual of the Assembly of Delegates. So thank you very much, and thank you for this opportunity. I know the task force was really taken with this opportunity to help improve our operating processes, both on the governance side and the operations side, and we look forward to working with you in the coming years at the board level in terms of implementing this. So back to you, Robert, as to see if there are any questions.
Thank you, Dwight. And I hand over to you, Jeremy, to have the report from the stakeholder review task force, a task force that has been put in place last year as a resolution took place to do so.
Okay, thanks, Robert, and thanks, Dwight, for prefacing this. I think you'll remember that last year, everyone, we passed a resolution to support a project, if you like, to examine how ICMCI could better interact with its global stakeholders. And we set up a small group, and I can see Juan was one of those members. Juan's online right now, and met a few times and had some useful discussions, mainly focus on who are our stakeholders anyway, particularly who are ICMCI's stakeholders. Of course, there are many entities in the consulting landscape, and most of those are the responsibility of individual countries to deal with. So we were quite focused on our limit, if you like, where are our limits here, and we identified that there were only really a few key stakeholders that ICMCI needed to work with. One of those is international global bodies that have an interest in consulting, and funding bodies were a good example of those kind of organizations. But also regional entities, European, American, broader geographical entities that perhaps either represent consulting communities of some sort or represent consulting industries. And in Europe, for example, we have FEACO, the European Federation of Consulting Organizations, which is a body that deals with consulting companies rather than consulting consultants that our members deal with. So we narrowed down the fact that we really had two big thrusts that we needed to pursue, and we came up with 3 recommendations in contrast to the 50-something, I think, Dwight, that appear in your document, for continued work during 2023. And those 3 are listed in the report. But firstly, one thing that the board, when we discussed it, the board was very keen to implement and able to implement without affecting any bylaws, was to institute an observer status that we could award to international bodies. UNIDO, for example, is a great example of that. We are here at UNIDO's headquarters. UNIDO is a global body that has great interest in consulting and making sure that's done properly. And we, as ICMCI, want to maintain a permanent relationship with UNIDO. But our current arrangement doesn't really permit that to happen. They couldn't be a member because they're not an institute with individual consultants. So we've created this observer role. And what we want to do is roll that out during 2023 to selected organizations that the board would choose to have a relationship with ICMCI directly, rather than necessarily having relationships with individual countries, because they're a global entity. So that's our first recommendation. The board feels that this is a very sensible idea and has already started considering how much that would cost, what kind of benefits that would have for organizations, but none of it would affect membership, because these people wouldn't be members, they would be observer organizations. The second one, which is more delicate, of course, is that we know very well from our research that the global management consulting industry is huge. Those of you that were at the conference that we had earlier today will have heard Chris talking about the size of the global management consulting industry. And we know very well that our national institutes don't always have access to all of that community. In fact, in many countries, the access is quite limited. And one of the things that we will consult all our members, including everybody here, during 2023, is the desirability of changing our bylaws to permit additional organizations in countries to be to allow them to become members. Now, we know that this is a sensitive issue, which is why we have to consult very carefully on this. because it may affect individual countries that are here right now. But we know that this is a question that we have to ask, and we'll be canvassing all our members carefully and diligently during 2023 to get a sensible answer on the best way forward for that. Third recommendation that we have is to allow the board to allocate resources, both volunteer and potentially staff resources, to interact with our global stakeholders. And this may, of course, mean recruitment of new people. It may mean seeking volunteers to do this. But on each case, there will be a business case prepared to make sure that that's done with funds in mind. So if, for example, we take UNIDO, we're here in Vienna, and it's very convenient that currently the chair of the institute is here in Vienna through Austria. But there will come a time in future when that may not be the case. And yet ICMCI has to maintain a way of having a good, close relationship with UNIDO. And that may mean paying someone to do this. And this is what we need to consider for the future, not just for UNIDO, but for other global stakeholders that we may have. So those are our three key recommendations. The task force and its activity will continue into 2023. But as Robert mentioned earlier, this is my last meeting as a board member, as secretary. So it won't be me that will be leading that in future. It'll be one of the other board members, and they'll make a decision on how to take that forward at the board meeting tomorrow, I guess. It won't be me, it'll be the new board that take that consideration. So I'm happy to answer any questions about that, if anybody has one, and perhaps if anybody has any questions about Dwight's piece as well. We have a few minutes available to answer a question. Is that right, Robert?
It's right, but few means
just
few.
1 minute. So maybe we'll ask you to hold those questions and perhaps deal with them after Robert's made a more general presentation on the strategy for going forward.
No, we don't.
Oh, we did that.
We did that.
In which case, we're here.
No. Are there any questions in terms of clarification, of common understanding what we are talking about? If not, good to hear. And I really want to invite all of you, please be part of the discussion process, and please contribute to the process, because some of the discussions might be, or will have an effect on IMCs, and this is what we want to have, and we want to support the IMCs, and this is that's our goal. So please be part of the discussions, and we will approach you, we will inform you, we will update you, and I hope, and I'm looking forward for very good discussions. Now it's becoming quiet, maybe because of the next item on the agenda. And the next item on the agenda says announcement of NSPC voting results, approval of new board directors, and I hand over to Dwight.
This is much more exciting to talk about than 50+ page reports. So thank you, Robert. First of all, as always, I have to thank the NSPC committee members who have done such good work this year. Alfred Harl from Austria, he was on the call this morning, not here now. Lydia Go from Singapore, also on the call this morning, not here now, but Randy Baldwin from the Americas, who is here based in Canada. So thank you for that. Also, Robert, as our chair and really representing in the sense of NSPC all delegates, was attended all meetings. Rima, our executive director, to bring us information and support, attends meetings, as does Husseima, who helps us with the logistics. So thank you for that. We did go through the voting process as usual this year. We had 9 very strong candidates. I would have been proud to work with any one of the 9 on the board, but unfortunately we had only 5 spots. So that's what election is about, is for today to identify those best 5 candidates. Tomorrow it might be a different story. So I do encourage those 4 who were not successful this time to continue to work at the governance level and to hopefully work on at the board level at some time in the future. For the first time, we had a situation at NSPC that we had to come up with a solution for because we had a tie. So two candidates had exactly the same number of votes, which affects, of course, the lineup of the 5 successful candidates. So we consulted with our secretary of the board whether there was an official process in place, and working with him, we came up with a triple blind solution for a lottery. Looking at democratic organizations, it's quite common practice. If there is a tie, it doesn't happen very often because usually there's thousands of people voting. But when it does happen, a fair lottery is a way of determining the difference. Sometimes it's a flip of the coin, and we might have done that if we were all in the room together, but we weren't in the room. So Jeremy did join NSPC. He had he'd chosen 2 letters. I quite independently and before the meeting had identified letters against those 2 candidates, and then a third person on the board actually chose one of the envelopes. So that way we were able to come up with a totally fair, totally impossible to have any bias in terms of who might have been the candidate. I do want to thank, just before I announce the results, Jeremy, thank you very much for your service, particularly as Secretary of the Board. I know it has been a lot, and I appreciate your time on the board and having collaborated with you over the past years. And Zhang Yanyan of China, this is the end of her term on the board as well. And I also enjoyed very much working with her and wish her all the best. So they will be receiving their certificates of appreciation. So now I can announce in alphabetical order, because we have traditionally not given the voting results, and it's almost useless to do that anyway, because the voting is so close, as indicated that by that tie. I don't think there should be a ranking of sort of who had the most votes. It's really who are the 5 candidates that have been selected. So in alphabetical order, Alan Blackman from Australia, he will be beginning his first term. You may have seen Alan around in this past year. He was asked to serve to fill in a vacancy with the resignation of Jan Willem. So he volunteered to do that as an ad hoc board member, but now does take his first official term starting tomorrow. Second candidate in alphabetical order, Roger Husler from Switzerland. He's beginning his first term. Johanna Luca from Kosovo. She's beginning her second term. So she's repeating in her second, and this will be her last term on the board. Gergana Mantakova, I don't know why I stumble on that, Gergana, when I have a last name by Moholitz, but it always gives me a problem. Anyway, Gergana, welcome. She's a successful candidate, also serving her second term, and we're welcoming her to that. And then a new candidate to the board, Norma Shorey from the Caribbean Institute, is beginning her first term. So congratulations to these 5 successful candidates. And thank you again to the 4 who competed. Were willing to put their name forward. I know this is not easy to do, because you are putting yourself out there. And I say it's it's not this time in terms of the delegates selecting the 5. And I do look forward to working with you in whatever ways you choose moving forward in the future. So back to you, Robert. This is the report of NSPC.
Thank you, Dwight, and thank you for all the work. I know this time it was really tough to sort out this tie situation, but it never happened in the last 35 years. So one time is always the first time, and I want to thank all the candidates that have been on the list, but are number 6 or number 7 or whatever. Not in that are not in the board, and as you said, it was very tight, and I would have been proud to work with all of you, and that was my proposal, to sort out the tie situation. But I can't accept all of them. That's the bylaws, and that's the situation. It's not possible. And I'm looking forward to work with the new members, but also with the existing members in the board. And yes, we have a meeting tomorrow to set the scene for the next steps. the time is gone. It's so 90 minutes. It's very short. Usually we would end this meeting and say, let's meet in the bar. Yes, maybe you go to the bar anyway. We do it in Vienna, but it's that's something I'm really missing, because I know many of you, and I would really like to meet you in person and discuss many things. But I hope we can do that next year. I know we said this last year, and we said that already the year before last year. But let's stay positive. No, don't become positive. Stay negative, but think positive. Okay, it's at the hour. It's sorry. Yes, please do not forget to vote for the resolutions. You still have something like 13 hours left, but in some parts of the world you might go to sleep. Do that before. I wouldn't wake up before just for voting. So many thanks for joining. Many thanks for the very good discussions. Hope to see you soon, and hope to have further discussions about the strategic priorities in our next ongoing projects. All the best and have a nice day. Whatever you go to sleep, whatever, and hope to see you soon. Bye bye. Bye bye.